What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Spartan, and in today's video we are going to be looking at what has happened in week 1, and we'll be previewing week 2, so you guys will be ready for your fantasy football seasons. But yeah, let's get straight into it. So week 1 was one of the most interesting weeks that we've seen in a long time. There were some huge injuries, some huge plays, some breakout stars as well. But anyway, I'm going to be covering a lot of different things in this video, but first, we're going to go over some of the biggest injuries. There were 4 really big injuries that happened in week 1. The first of those being Michael Thomas. Okay, so Michael Thomas, early on in the game against the Buccaneers, he hurt his ankle and he had to miss the rest of the game. So, turns out that Michael Thomas has sprained his ankle. So, obviously, that's not going to be good for him. He is expected to miss next week, so just go ahead and take him out of your lineups for this week. I know you probably drafted with your first pick of the draft, a blow to your team for this week, but he will not be playing this next week. The second biggest injury is George Kittle, and George Kittle injured his knee last week. Now, George Kittle's injury is more of a game-time decision whether or not he's going to be playing. So if you have Kittle on your team, just keep your eye on it up until the day whenever he's about to play his game. I believe he has a Sunday game, so just watch him close to the game to see if you need to put your backup in, because he still is a question mark whether or not Kittle will be playing this week or not. The third injury that happened was Marlon Mack getting injured. So Marlon Mack is going to be missing the entire rest of the season due to his injury. He has torn his Achilles, so obviously that's not going to be good for him. If you got Marlon Mack, you can go ahead and drop him. He's going to be off for the rest of the season. This is, however, going to give a boost to Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, so if you have either of those guys, go ahead and start them a little bit higher. We'll get to that later on in the video, though. And the fourth and final major injury that happened this week was Le'Veon Bell getting hurt. Now, Le'Veon Bell, so he got hurt, obviously. He went for halftime, and he came out after halftime and did not look like himself when he got put back in the game. After the game, Adam Gase said that he wished he did not play Le'Veon Bell. And as of yesterday, Le'Veon Bell was put on the injury reserve for the Jets. So that means that Le'Veon Bell will 100% guaranteed be missing at least 3 weeks of the NFL season. So obviously take him out of your line for this week. He is not going to get you any production at all. But yeah, that's the top 4 biggest injuries of week 1. Let's get straight into buy low, sell high. So in this part, I'm gonna give you guys some players that you can sell high and a couple other players that you can buy low right now on opposing players' teams. So first things first, the first player that you are going to be wanting to buy low this week is Leonard Fournette. Now, Leonard Fournette, obviously, he did not get any workload for the Buccaneers at all. So you can basically get him for nothing right now. There is a chance that he is going to be the starting running back at some point during the season, and if he does ever take over, he's going to be amazing in fantasy football. And for the value you can get him for right now, he is definitely worth the add to your team. So if you can give him a player that's not normally starting in your lineup for Leonard Fournette, that's definitely going to be worth it. Go ahead and get him on your team. Another player you're going to be wanting to buy low on is Austin Eckler. Okay, Austin Eckler is a Chargers running back. Obviously, he did not get as much production as a lot of people have been expecting him to. He is an amazing pass-catching back, and he was not involved at all in the passing game. To think that he's not going to be involved in the passing game is insane. He's going to catch balls in the future. He's going to get a lot more fantasy points than he had right now. This is about the lowest I think Austin Eckler is going to be for the rest of the season. If you go to your opponent's teams, if you can make a solid deal for Austin Eckler, definitely try to do that, because he is going to probably, in the next couple of weeks, turn out to be amazing, and you will be very happy that you did make that trade for Austin Eckler. Alright, let's get straight into players that you're going to be wanting to sell high now. So the first player you're going to be wanting to sell high on this week is Chris Carson. Alright, now Chris Carson is an interesting player. He scored 2 passing touchdowns. He caught for over 64 yards. He was amazing last week. But here's the stat that's starting to scare me a little bit. He only had 7 carries. Carlos Hyde had more rushing attempts than Chris Carson did last week. He had 8. Chris Carson had 7. Now, last season, Chris Carson was a ground-and-pound back. He got the ball a lot in his hands. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep up his passing production as he did last week. I can guarantee you he will not catch 2 passing touchdowns again next week. I personally think that this is the highest amount of points that Chris Carson will be scoring this season. So if you can sell him for a player that is considered to be close to his skill level, you will be winning that trade at the end of the day, because Chris Carson will not produce like this again. I don't think he's going to get that many touchdown catches, and with Carlos Hyde in the backfield, it just scares me. having Chris Carson on your team. The next player I have to sell high on is Nick Chubb. Now, obviously, Nick Chubb did not have a great week last season, but if you can sell him for anywhere close to where he's supposed to be valued, which is into the second round, beginning of the third round value, then you'll be winning that deal. Let me read you a stat. Kareem Hunt had 72 yards on 13 carries, and Nick Chubb only had 60 yards on 10 carries. So, obviously, this is going to be a committee backfield. I don't want Nick Chubb on my team. He's not going to finish as a top 10 back, more than likely. That is, unless Kareem Hunt gets hurt, which is very unlikely. They're going to be splitting a lot more in Kevin Stefanski's new offense, so I'm just really scared to have you on my team. If you can trade him, you will be winning that deal as well. Another player that I would like for you guys to get rid of is Le'Veon Bell. Now, Le'Veon Bell, obviously, he got injured. I don't want any part of him this season, so if you can get him for a player that you can contend for a flex spot, I would go ahead and do it. I don't think that Le'Veon Bell is going to be a week-to-week starter, guaranteed. Even when he comes back from his injury, he might not be the same player he was. And even when he was healthy, he was maybe a borderline running back too. So that's why I would say get rid of Le'Veon Bell if you can get a flex player around that type, at least for your fantasy team. All right, that is all of my sell highs. Let's get straight on to my waiver wire add columns. The first player that you need to add to your team from the waiver wire is Malcolm Brown. He's still available in about 40% of leagues. Go to waiver wire, check for him right now because he was amazing in week 1. He ran all over that Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defensive line was supposed to be really, really good this season, and Malcolm Brown tore it up. Malcolm Brown, he's going to be an amazing fantasy player for this season. Most people were thinking it was going to be Darrell Henderson or Cam Akers, but no. Malcolm Brown is going to be amazing this season. He got a lot of carries, and not only that, but he was very productive on every single touch that he got the ball. Malcolm Brown, an amazing fantasy asset to your team. My second waiver wire add to your team is going to have to be Nyheim Hines. So, obviously, he had a decent week last season with Marlon Mack going out. Marlon Mack's going to be gone for the whole season, so now it's going to be Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor. The Colts have said that Jonathan Taylor is not going to be an every down back, which leaves Nyheim Hines on the field, exactly where you want it for your fantasy team. If you put him on your roster, he can contend for that flex spot from week to week, maybe that running back 2 even, depending on how the Colts decide to use him. He looked very good in week 1. I think he could be good for the future for your team. So if you can't get Malcolm Brown, get Nyheim Hines. Maybe you get both. Maybe you get really lucky on your waiver wire. But those are my 2 waiver wire ads for the week. All right, let's get into some interesting matchups and things you want to be looking for your fantasy football week this week, and who I think you should more than definitely start and who you should definitely not start. All right, so the first couple players that you are not going to be wanting to start is anyone in the Patriots backfield. Until proven otherwise, do not start anyone in the backfield. They're not going to be reliable. The Patriots running back you want is Cam Newton, who we'll talk about in just a second, but do not start anyone in the Patriots backfield. James White is the player that you need to keep on your roster just because he may be good in the future. I'm not going to start him this week in any of my leagues just because I don't know how many times he's going to get the ball. Cam Newton looked like an amazing running back last season, so yeah. Another player you're not going to want to start this week is Deshawn Watson. He's going up against an incredibly tough Baltimore Ravens defense. If you have another player that you could put in for him, definitely do it this week just because I don't believe that Deshawn Watson is in for a great week. He got pummeled by the Chiefs defensive line, which is not elite, and the Baltimore defensive line is elite. They're going to get to him a lot. He's going to be under pressure. They have a really good secondary, and they have good linebackers as well. He's going to get picked off quite a bit, and he's going to get sacked for the rest of the game. So do not start Deshaun Watson unless you absolutely have to this week. All right, now into some players that you are going to want to start. You are going to want to start Cam Newton this week. So Cam Newton, we already talked about a little bit, but he had 75 rushing yards as a quarterback, yes, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Not to mention him throwing for 155 yards, not fumbling once, not throwing 1 interception, despite playing against the Miami Dolphins, who have really good cornerbacks in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. So, Cam Newton, I think he's going to be a good fantasy quarterback. I'll say start him unless you have one of the elite quarterbacks, that being Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. If you're one of those 5 guys, I would say Cam Newton, an amazing fantasy start for this upcoming week. Another fantasy player you need to start, and I'm just going to say, don't give up on Saquon Barkley, okay? Saquon Barkley is an amazing fantasy football running back. I know he didn't look amazing in week 1. I think he's going to be able to bounce back in week 2. Don't give up on him. Don't trade him away just because he had a bad week. Keep him on your team. He's going to be a good fantasy running back for this season. Well, I take it back. He's going to be an elite fantasy running back for this season. He won't just be good for your team. He's going to be amazing. Don't give up on him quite yet. He's only had 1 week to show himself, and he played against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which is arguably the best defense in the entire NFL. Just give Saquon Barkley another week, and he will prove to you that he is an amazing fantasy football running back. Another player that you're going to want to be starting this week is anyone on the Buccaneers roster. So the Buccaneers, they're playing against the Carolina Panthers. They've got a really banged up, inexperienced defense. They did not look amazing last week. They gave up 3 rushing touchdowns to Josh Jacobs alone. So this is going to be Mike Evans' chance to bounce back and prove himself. This is going to be Chris Godwin's chance to prove that he is a top 5 wide receiver. This is going to be Ronald Jones / Leonard Fournette's chance to prove that they could be amazing running backs, and Tom Brady's chance to redeem himself as a relevant starting quarterback. So, Buccaneers, a solid offense to start just because they are playing against the Carolina Panthers defense. Another offense that you just want to start generally this week is the Titans offense. They're playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who has a completely depleted core. They're a very vulnerable defense. Obviously, they stopped the Colts somehow last week. They might be better than we think, but from what I'm seeing from their roster build, they are not going to be an amazing defense. A lot of fantasy points, I think, are going to be scored against them next week by the Tennessee Titans. So Derrick Henry, obviously, he's going to be starting anyway for most of your leagues, but A.J. Brown, definitely start him. Ryan Tannehill is another player. Maybe you have Deshaun Watson on your team, and you're looking for another quarterback. Ryan Tannehill playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is a great matchup. So I would start Tannehill in that situation. But yeah, that is my week 1 highlights and week 2 preview. Hope this video is able to help you guys out with your fantasy teams. If you guys have a question on who you need to start for the next week, be sure to comment down below and answer any questions that you guys might have about whether or not to start certain players for this upcoming week. But yeah, be sure to subscribe, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video.